I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Hi, welcome back to Marriage is the Best. Today I have an incredibly special guest, Julie. She was married for 22 years together, 28 total, and we'll get into that. She runs a nonprofit that serves families and with therapy and supervised visits and basically serving families in the community. She's worked in social work for the last 25 years. She has 6 biological kids and has adopted 2 children, so a total of 8. And she's really lovely.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. She also happens to be biologically related to me. I share 50% of her genes, so if you can figure out what that means, then good job.
Yeah, it's nice to be your mom.
Yeah, I mean, you gave it away now. Now they know.
Well, I didn't want anybody to wonder.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. Yeah, well, here we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about your marriage, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you went through and just kind of tell your story. And then, yeah, hopefully people will benefit from just hearing an example of what marriage can look like. And as we share your experience.
Sure.
Cool beans. So what kind of marriage did you grow up seeing with your own parents?
Oh, well, I have 2 really beautiful parents. They are actually both still living. They are very unique people, as far as like they were really unique from one another. And I think that a lot of marriages experience that, where they have a lot of complementary gifts and talents and interests, but not necessarily shared. And so I think the things that were really good was that we had a lot of fun as a family. We enjoyed lake life. We enjoyed vacationing together. We had a lot of fun with the things that we were able to do. We had a lot of privileges. My dad was very successful, and we had a pretty traditional family as far as he went to work, and my mom was home with the children, kind of what you'd expect back in the 60s and 70s. The things that didn't go well, I think, were the non-shared values and how to live out family life, how to live out relationships. And I think those became wedges and kind of undermined the longevity of their marriage. They weren't able to stay together after, I don't even know how many years they were together, but it was when I was early in college that they separated and divorced. So there's lots of good things, and I have a wonderful relationship with them both now. They both have different marriages and are doing really well. But I think marriage is hard no matter what. It doesn't really matter. It's always a challenge. So yeah, that's kind of my memories of what it was like to be in their home.
What sort of non-shared values did you see them kind of struggling with, and what sort of trouble did you see from your perspective, both then and now?
And my parents' non-shared values. Well, I think maybe it's how you would think of what family life is. I think my dad kind of saw family life as more kind of doing the things that he wanted and still kind of living out all of his interests, personal interests, versus where my mom was very focused on the children and really investing in them and she likes to talk about, oh, isn't it wonderful that we're all together? So that's kind of her little statement. And it is true. It is wonderful to all be together. But I think that she poured a lot of her hopes and dreams in being all together. And that isn't necessarily how my dad kind of saw his life at that time. I think he sees it now, but I don't think he was seeing it then. Yeah.
Do you think that in your generation, do you think that was like a pretty widespread value discrepancy where a lot of women maybe were pouring into their families and men were kind of working, but also able to live a more independent lifestyle away from kids and family responsibilities?
Probably. I mean, I guess I can't really speak for everybody, but I guess I would imagine that sort of that's what a lot of people experience. Or I guess I don't know if I should generalize like that, but I don't think it's an uncommon experience. I'll also say that.
Yeah. It almost sounds like there's a kind of different cultural, normal dynamics within different seasons of marriage, right? Like within the generations, there's different themes within the different marriage generations.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, just like there are parenting themes that are very clear, you know, now there's like very much gentle parenting and some other kinds of parenting that are very much strongly represented, or just a large percentage of people are doing that. Whereas in the previous generation, we're more focused on, I mean, that was your generation.
Yeah. Dare to Discipline was a big, it was a book. It was very popular. So yes, I agree with you. During each season, I think culture takes on different values. And I do think that it was very common back then for men to be really independent and women to be really home and with the children, and it wasn't shared. And I think my mom really wanted it to be shared, and it really wasn't reciprocated. So yeah, I think that is one of the things. There's other things too. I think money, you know, we know that that's an issue in marriages, and how people view it, spend it, save it. It can be a problem if you don't share the same value of, or the expectation of how this is going to get done.
Do you remember what them not sharing their financial value kind of looked like or sounded like at all?
Oh yes, I remember. I'm not going to talk about it, but it wasn't pleasant, and yet there was still a lot of privilege. We had a lot of wonderful things. We had beautiful family vacations. We lived in a really special spot on a lake, and so there was a lot of lovely things we had. We had what we needed and a little bit more, and but even with that, there was strife over finances. So
it wasn't like a lack of finances, but a mismatch of where the finances should go, the value of money, how we spend it, how we save it.
Yeah, I would say that yes. That would be a good way to sum it up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we've got the family disconnect, right? And like a kind of a role disconnect there. There's the financial kind of how we want to live that out disconnect. Other mismatching values that played a role in your parents' marriage?
Well, you know, as a child, you're just observing two adults walk through life. And so I'm not privy to a lot of things that they were working on. I know that they did work hard and tried very hard in their relationship to align with one another. I don't know. I'm not privy to quite a bit of that, honestly. It wasn't really lived out in front of us real obviously. I mean, there was pieces of it that we understood were going on, but as far as details, we really didn't know. So I think what I shared is kind of what I know.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that there weren't more things, though.
That makes a lot of sense. And truly, I think that's probably how it should look, where the kids aren't privy to all of the marital dysfunction and all the things that are, going wrong, whether it be values or, just interpersonal things. So that's a good thing,
Yeah.
in one sense.
Right. I think what's going on internally for people, what my mom is thinking, what my dad was thinking. They were always good to us. They certainly were hurt and wounded. There's nothing pleasant about a divorce. Those things really take their toll on the children and on the adults. And so everybody's kind of in survival mode and trying to do the best that they can. And, I don't mean to make light of the circumstance, like trying to pass it off as it wasn't hard, because it was really hard. But I also want to honor, as, looking back and from a different lens now that I'm older and have gone through my own struggles, there's a lot of grace for the experiences that I know happened to them. Not that I understood what was happening, but that I know that they experienced. So anyway.
Great. What attracted you to your partner then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw that on your paper. So, I entered college as my parents were divorcing. And I was probably not in a very good state of mind to be thinking about getting into a serious relationship because I was incredibly wounded by what was happening in my family. And so I wanted to like safeguard my life from being divorced because I thought that would be probably one of the worst things that could ever happen to me. So first of all, I really was looking for somebody to kind of take me out of the mess I felt like I was in, which was, the kind of the unraveling of my family. And I was looking for someone who was very spiritual, who had a passion for God. I think, what other things would attract you to someone? I suppose he was funny and he liked me, and that was very flattering. And he seemed to be really good to my family. Like he was good to my mom. My mom really enjoyed, he would come over because I didn't live all that far from college. So he would come over with friends and he was good to my mother and she loved that. So I think you think we thought we were kind of on the same page at the very beginning. And I think we probably were. We had a heart for God and a heart for serving him. But wounded people carry their wounds. And I think you don't realize that you're not healed or, we weren't talking about trauma and those kinds of things back then, like people understand today. So we didn't have the language to like know that the things that happened to us when we were growing up are going to affect how we come together as a couple. And, looking back and knowing what I know today, I would say I needed a lot of therapy and some real serious help back then because I was trying to like fill a gap that was not my fault, but it happened to me and I was trying to fill something. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, there's a bit of a vulnerability in the season, right? And so it sounds like in that vulnerability, you're making choices and decisions and you're moving forward in your life and maybe not knowing how the vulnerability is impacting the choices that you're making. What does that look like 5 years down the road? What does it look like 10 years down the road, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have to be healed people. I mean, in reality, we don't have to be healed. None of us is at 100%, without stuff, like we have our things. But there would have been good for me to give myself some time to figure out my own life and my, just kind of like get through what had kind of like the storm that had hit my world. And if I would have been able to take some time, maybe I would have just known myself better. And I think that that's a very important part of like bringing yourself into the relationship. It's not somebody that's going to fix you or save you. You really need to come prepared to be a contributing partner.
Sure. Yeah, you have to bring your full self. And so knowing what that is or means, although, knowing that is very difficult when you're in college or high school. Most people at that stage of development don't know themselves too well. And so it's difficult to make those big decisions when you don't know yourself or you have these big wounds that you're carrying into relationship after relationship or even into a marriage.
Yeah.
Did you guys share a lot of values?
I think we thought we did. Our faith obviously was number one. We both wanted children. We knew that. We were in school. I don't think I knew what it meant to start over, like not in my nucleus of my family, like what it meant to really attach myself to start my own family with my husband. And there's a lot that you give up, a lot of, and I didn't know that. I didn't understand, like accepting the newness and the differences of starting life with somebody. You have to grow and build, whether it's financially or, other aspects of who you are in your relationship.
So the faith was a strong shared value. Something that you didn't quite understand in that early part of the marriage was just how much you have to give up, in the sense of giving up your first family in order to build up a second one.
Yeah, build your own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't really even built my own life. I had basically just graduated from college, so I didn't know what it meant to have a full-time job even. I could be a student and I worked part-time, but I never had my own full-time job and paid a rent other than college, dorm life, things like that. So I feel like a little life under your belt does help. I know that's not everybody's story, but I do think it probably would have benefited me just from like looking back at who I was then, and how there were so many parts of my life that really were just, it's almost like you're covering up these gaping wounds in your soul with like getting ready to get married and graduating from college and, planning this party. And the wounds are still there and they're not really healed. And then you try to build something with somebody from the very beginning and you don't have any financial resources and you're in college. We went to more college. So we were still in school. And anyway, all of those things together, I think I was not, I look at myself and what I was bringing to the relationship, and I'm sure I was certainly not bringing a whole person. I was bringing, a wounded person that was very young and immature, even though I thought I was mature. I thought I was very mature. So
you've talked about it a little bit already, but what else can you say about the early part of your marriage? What was that like for you?
Well, there's aspects of it that are thrilling and fun, and you're starting parts of it. But I also think, like, I still didn't know how to be an adult yet. So, like, I knew how to do basic things, but, just taking on all these responsibilities and learning how to be in a relationship, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to being an adult and taking care of yourself.
Trying to figure out what does it mean to be an adult in the real world, because college is not the real world. Mm-hmm. And so that is a difficult part of the transition. Yeah. Other parts of your marriage early on that you remember? You guys had some big transitions that you entered into right away.
Yeah, there was a lot of changes that happened very fast. And I feel like I think that's one of the hallmarks of being young and immature, is that you're really not doing things jointly. So the decision to go to college or to seminary is what we were doing. So we're in seminary. The expectation was we were going to finish seminary before we did anything else. And then there was some decisions made that I had no idea about. And all of a sudden we're part-time in seminary, but we have a full-time youth pastor position that's across the cities. So all of a sudden we're moving out of college housing or seminary housing into a parsonage essentially, across the cities, and trying to do part-time school. And that didn't work very well. And then we have a pregnancy and then we have another pregnancy, and we're working and trying to do seminary that's far away. And it's hard because it's so far, and now we're committed to full-time work. So some of those decisions were not made jointly. I mean, I don't mean the babies, but I mean the working and basically leaving seminary, even though it wasn't the intent, it's what happened. And that decision wasn't made jointly. And then there was a desire to move across the country. to Washington State. And so we made another big move. So we made all sorts of big moves really fast. And we were adding to our family very quickly, like the babies came quick. And so that adds a lot of stress. And I know that stress can be very good. It builds resiliency. It makes us grow. It makes us trust God. Like there's a lot of okay things about stress. But I also think that there's something to be said for something that's predictable and reliable and repeatable. And then also along with that is making decisions jointly and not forcing a decision on somebody, because you can think you're making it jointly, but really put the pressure on someone to say yes. And thinking, I think too, maybe over spiritualizing, thinking, oh, well, this is what God wants. And I think that can also be an issue. And I feel like it maybe was for us, is over spiritualizing and thinking, well, it's very noble for us to make this huge move. And support systems are key in people's lives. And we know there's something called the 5 protective factors. And one of them is to have social connections. And when you remove yourself from all your social connections and isolate, that's really, really hard on everyone. And that's what happened when we moved from Minnesota to Washington State. And I've had 2 babies and I'm pregnant with a third. Like probably not the best time to be moving across the country, but we did it, and we learned a lot. And we had, there's good that came from it, but it adds so much stress. So I think, if I could look back, I don't even know if this is a question you asked me, but thinking about things that I wish we would have done differently. I think staying in our circle, staying with the people that knew us well, and just stabilizing what we had and the things that were going on in our life would probably have been healthier overall. Well, not probably, it would have been.
Yeah.
And not to discount like all the good things that came from it, because, we'd made those choices, but just knowing what I know about the stress and how detrimental that is, probably would have been better to not add that to already very young people who are just trying to build their life. So,
yeah, it sounds like a patch of chaos.
Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah.
I can't help but think about how much that mirrors my story. Oh my goodness. Becca and I have done the first 3 years of marriage. So we just finished. We did year 3.
Oh.
So we talked about our early on with number 3 and the chaos of that, and sleeping on the full bed in the living room. And so I just, hearing your story reminds me of how similar our stories are.
Yes, there's a lot of things, because I'm your mom, I know a lot that you went through. The compounding stress that just happens, and some of it is unavoidable, and not all of it is so detrimental that it's like not. It doesn't. I guess I'm trying to say it can make you stronger,
right?
And it builds resiliency. And there's a lot of things that can happen, but if you can avoid some aspects of it, like moving across the country, probably didn't need to do that.
Right. Right. I think one thing that is very similar about that is that we're both very young. And I think that being young, having maybe a bit of a Superman kind of complex where we can do anything, and not knowing what we know now, which was that just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should be doing it. Mm-hmm. And that if you choose to do a thing and it adds a crazy amount of stress and negatively impacts mental health and financial well-being and physical health and all of those factors, you're going to pay for a lot of those decisions, but you don't necessarily see that right early on, and you're so maybe blinded by your development and thinking that it would be like, we'll just be resilient through it, right? Like it'll just be fine. Mm-hmm. And I still find myself thinking that sometimes.
Yeah, I think, Well, I'll let you ask your next question.
Yeah. Okay, so what were the biggest challenges then that you guys faced? Now, not just early on. We talked a lot about the early on challenges, but maybe launch yourself into the, later 2/3 or, 4/5 of your marriage. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Well, I think, well, life is challenging. It really doesn't matter. Raising a family, raising children. I think we were pretty aligned in how we were going to raise our children and discipline children, and that we wanted a bigger family. I don't know that we set out to have 8 children. Like, that wasn't our goal. Originally, it was like, let's have 4 kids. And then we were like, well, maybe we should think about it. But we that's how we ended up with the 6 biological children. It was that we considered, is that what we want? But I think the more children you have, the more stress there is. I think finances are stressful. I think church ministry is stressful. I think being away from support systems is stressful, like my family, because they were a support system. So, and my ex-husband's family was, several family members were amazing to us. They were present. They were there when they could be. So it wasn't that they weren't there. I think I guess I would say those are the hard things. I think finances are hard, especially back in the 80s. Pastors weren't paid very much. And
they're paid a whole heap now.
Yeah, it's just, they're raking it in. But it was hard because financially we had school loans, and, a master's of divinity is the same as any master's. It's expensive, and it was added to, a lower income just because he was a pastor. But we were fine. Like, I look back, and I guess I look back at like the years where the kids were like in the early grade school, early middle school stage of life. Like, to me, those were really precious years. There was a lot of great memories, and we, wanted our kids to experience sports. We tried to do the kinds of vacations that we could afford and make memories with the kids. And I feel like we were able to do that to a certain degree. There's people who could do a lot more, but we figured it out, how to have a lot of fun as a family. So I think that there's a lot of good and a lot of alignment in those years. But I think too, then coping with stress and not knowing how over time is what really started to unravel things. So I wasn't coping with stress very well. Like, I think, I look back at what was happening to me physically, and I realized, I didn't know that there was a word for it. But I didn't realize what I was going through. But I think your dad also was going through some really awful things, and he didn't know how to cope. And so he was doing the best he could, and I was doing the best I could. And that is what started, the extra stresses, the extra financial issues, moving again, across country again. Like, starting over is not a pleasant way to live. It's really hard on people, and it's not that people can't do it. It's just you add lower income, you add bigger amount of children, you add leaving like what you built as your support system, like what we had back in Washington, and then coming here, and we had the family support system, but we certainly had to build a friendship support system.
And a career support system.
And so we started that, but I think, I just know that we all cope in different ways. And so some of that got the best of him.
Yeah, and stress kind of overwhelmed the system.
Yeah.
The combination of all the stress in the system and the not knowing how to cope.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a 1-2.
And I think, to be really honest, the stress of ministry, especially, thinking about how people perceive you and what you perceive of yourself. Like we really thought that we had come a long way in not falling into stereotypical roles, not having the church be our life. We thought we had come a long way, but I look back and I'm like, well, we had a lot to overcome still too. And we didn't know how to seek the support that we needed. We needed therapy. We needed somebody to speak into our life and to be able to tell what was happening for us as humans, because we're not supernatural. We have human bodies, human minds, human emotions, and we needed some help to get through the things that were challenging for us and some of the things that were overwhelming. And we didn't know how to get that help. I think we tried, but it was insufficient for the needs. And I think we really could have used some intervention. And I don't mean I just mean intervention like friends and people and the resources coming our way that were going to speak into some of those areas. But you have to be willing to be vulnerable too. And so if you're not going to get the resources that you need. So you have to be willing to say, I'm having a hard time.
Right.
And I don't think we knew how to do that very well.
Yeah, it's kind of like the horse and the water and the drinking.
Mm-hmm. I have the book.
Oh yeah. So, but then eventually, those factors culminated, and what do you think actually at the end kind of broke down the marriage? This thing that you guys had built and lived for so long in, and had all these kids in. How do you see the breakage of it? Like, what happened?
Well, I want to be really careful because there's been so much healing that has happened for me personally, and it is not ever one-sided in any kind of breakdown of a relationship.
Yeah, there's always parts.
Yeah. And yeah. Like I was explaining earlier today or earlier in this talk, that when I came into the marriage, I wasn't a whole person. Like, I mean, I thought I was. I thought I had my things together. I thought I was very mature. But there's a lot of wounds and a lot of things that were not healed in me that didn't necessarily make me a great wife. And so knowing and thinking about your dad during that time in his life, I know your listeners are going to think, well, why is she just skirting around the issue? Why isn't she just saying it? And I think number one, I don't want to dishonor him. And number two, I don't want it to be one-sided or to make it seem as if there isn't a shared responsibility. So his coping was addiction, and it unraveled me. And for whatever reason, there are people out there who have walked with their spouses through addiction and come out the other side and stayed in a relationship. The way that played out for me, I could not. I mean, I gave effort, don't get me wrong. I gave a lot of effort to try, but I could not get to a place where I could continue just due to the circumstances. So, but that's my contribution. There's people who have done that and have stayed and done and lived it out well.
Yeah, I think that the marriages that I run into where addiction is present is incredibly difficult to move through that with a spouse and come out on the other end and build up a healthy marriage again. I mean, addiction eats away at the foundation of any relationship. I mean, you could have a father-son relationship. You could have a brother-brother relationship. You could have any relationship when addiction is present, right, is gravely impacted. Something that I like to think about or say in session is that addiction makes intimacy impossible.
It is true.
So addiction removes your ability to be connected with your loved ones.
Yes.
Because addiction is primary. And it's not the relationship, and it's not the kids, and it's not anything else, right? Addiction is primary. So when that number one slot is taken up and the addiction takes over, it ruins things.
And addiction is nasty. Like, I work in the realm of addiction and watch its impact on families. I watch people have to go through recovery, and it is a talon that I would not want in my soul, because when I watch the suffering often, and it is rotten. I mean, I lived it, but watching it without the emotion of it impacting me personally, there's a lot of compassion for people's stories. And there's a reason, there's some predisposition to addiction that comes out of our own families and our own history. There's that piece. Then there's just life is hard and stress is real and coping is challenging. And so where do we go to find some comfort? And all of a sudden we don't realize that it is a very slippery slope that's got us. And so I looking at it from, not on an emotional side, but just trying to walk with people through their story. I have a lot of compassion for that, but it did unravel our family, and that aspect is hard, that's a hard part of our story. And I know it, obviously was hard on the children. I'm just talking about being the wife right now, not the mother. So I'm not from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you look back at the entire marriage, you've identified a couple of these things, but I'm curious, is there anything that you feel like you would have liked to have been able to change?
Oh, well, yeah. I think that a lot of things I would have liked to be able to change. And I think I've kind of been saying it all along. I think I wish I would have come a little more healthy. I wish your dad had been a little more healthy. We were two very young people coming out of college thinking we were doing the right thing. And jumping into ministry is hard, and it's hard on people, and it'll eat your lunch if you're not ready for it. And I think, so being healthy people, there's a lot to what that means, and I'm not going to unpack that right now, but, healing from your own story, working on those aspects, recognizing that there are these wounds. And I think we have a lot more language for it now. I mean, just talking about the word trauma, everybody seems to know what it is. It's not, but not that many years ago, people weren't talking about it. They didn't know about it. But it makes a lot of sense. So, we come to life with what's happened to us. We come to life with a model. I think trying to put two different models of life together is really challenging, and it can be very nuanced. It can be very things that you would never think were differences or could be a difference. And then just navigating what that means or how it feels to be in a relationship with somebody who reacts differently to things or is okay with, I don't know. I don't even know. I could talk about, it can be really, really small things, what you eat, how you exercise, if you exercise, the whole gamut. So, I mean, those are small in comparison to some of the bigger issues. So, what would I have done differently? I would like that part to have been myself, to have maybe had a little more time to grow up. I think ministry, like I said, is really hard. And so I think that there just needs to be a lot more support for people who are giving out on a spiritual level. And I think we need to really think about that. How do we recognize their humanness in their giving of themselves, and helping point people to God, because that's their heart. That's what they want to do, but they're human just like anybody else. And so how do we make sure that they're supported and recognized as just like anyone else with frailties. And then I'm really glad we had the size family that we had. I never regret the amount of children we have. I am so proud to be the mom. I think I could have been a better wife. And I think, I think that's a trap for women who really love family and love children, is that you can kind of give everything to that versus really learning how to be married. But I think it's sort of a stage of life too that you have to kind of walk through. They need you, and so you have to be present for them. It's different than if they're bigger and they're off to college or whatever, not college, but even in grade school, once they're a little older. But during that season, and you're doing lots of children, there's a long time where you're required to be there constantly for them. So just learning how to navigate that better and be a better wife, and really honor the marriage more and my husband more, I think would have, I think anything, I can't predict how that's going to be received, but I look back and just wanted to own the parts of my story that are, that I recognize are my own issues or failures along the way. So I think those are a couple things.
Do you hold on to any really good memories that you really cherish still, or that you look back on in the marriage or in the family, in those years that you had? Of
course. Yeah. We raised a family. Not all of the parts of our life were sad parts of our story. We had 6 biological babies. Your dad loved being a dad. He loved his children. He was present for everyone's birth and raising the littles, and to the best of his ability, he was present for those things. So there was a shared value in that. We had great community once we found it. We had lots of people in our life who really loved us and cared about us, and that helped us in our walk with God. I think that those are really great shared memories. There are, just the quiet everyday routines that we did. We always ate dinner together as a family. We did devotions at night before bed. I think about all the fun activities that we participated in with the kids. I think, probably everybody's highlight is when the house with the pool.
Mm.
And, that's a great memory of being there together, because there was so much fun that we had together.
Yeah, it was a special place.
It was.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
That holds a lot of fun for me.
Okay. So, do you have any other thoughts, any other things that you'd like to share looking back on the marriage as a whole, looking maybe even toward the end part? Obviously there's so much pain there. There's the chemical health part, the mental health part, the traumatic part of it. But you spent 6 years from year 22 to year 28 of this marriage living apart. And so what was that season like for you? There's these 6 years of separation, and there's so much pain in there. So I'm just curious if you could speak to that at all.
Well, I think you summed it up. Those 6 years was just a lot of pain. Nothing was resolved. Everything was tenuous, hoping something would change, but I was too angry to even recognize if something did change. I was not very healthy. Just trying to be present for the kids, because I know that they were going through a lot. So I wouldn't say that was my best years. I would say, as far as my relationship with your dad, as far as being present for the kids as a mother, yes. But if he had changed, I couldn't see it.
Because of that hurt that you talked about from the chemical dependency, you said it unraveled you.
Oh yeah, it did. And trying to think of how to, it's actually so long ago. It's almost hard to talk about because there's so much healing that's happened. So to remember that it wasn't a healthy part of my life, I guess, I don't think your dad was doing really great at that season. And so that also just complicated things. So it just was kind of a waiting period, and it wasn't great. It was a hard time, but I guess I want to turn it around to say that nothing is wasted in our life. And we all go through hard seasons, and we're all going to go through hard seasons. So nothing, but the beautiful part of it is nothing is wasted. And so when I look back at the healing that has happened in my heart and all that God has done to give me peace in my being, and I am so grateful for God's ability to take what looks like an impossible disaster and actually bring healing. And I really mean it. Like, I don't mean like a passive healing. I'm really healed, but it wasn't like quick, or it didn't take, like, it wasn't like I just prayed a prayer and it was all gone and there was no hard feelings. Like, it took a while, but through time and through being, wanting to be receptive to God, ministering to me in different ways and in different places, he really did heal me. And I care very much about your dad. I think that he still is very kind to me. He says nice things to me. He's married. He has a great wife. She's lovely, and she's good to you kids. So that makes me very happy. I look at all that and I think, well, that, it's not ideal. It isn't what I would hope, but God didn't waste it. And so he also didn't waste it in like the work that he had me do. Like, I learned so much through through the hard things. And so then I come to working with families who are going through something similar. And I feel like I have a level of wisdom, a level of kindness and patience and non-judgmental. Like, I'm not saying I'm always that way, because I'm sure I have my moments that I have to like self-correct. Like, that's not right, Julie, in your attitude or whatever. But I think mostly I can see his handiwork in my life, and he made me ready to do and gave me opportunities to serve people who maybe have gone through some of the similar things that I have. So I just look at that and I think God is so good. And he's just on the move. Like, like I said, he doesn't waste anything. He's all about bringing things to the surface when he's ready and when he knows you're ready to start receiving the healing from him. And I think it happened in little chunks over time where I'm in a setting and all of a sudden he's revealing some things in my heart and in my mind. And then he's providing opportunity for me to experience some real, true ministry. And it's pretty beautiful. So
that's super cool. I love it. Okay. So we're to kind of wrap us up, we're going to look at the 4 different kind of seasons of your, relationship life. We're going to try and give advice and speak into people's like lives in these different seasons. So what would you say to a single person in 2025 when you look at your story and you look at your life and the lessons that you learned? Mm-hmm. What would you say to someone that's single right now?
Well, I'm single right now. So a young single person or just any single person?
It's up to you. Which one? Which one do you want?
I think, it's interesting because
we are going to do divorce later too. So you can say, this is actually for like the 20-year-old.
Okay. The 20-year-old. Wow. Well,
20 to 25.
Yeah.
That range.
So I think if you're a 20 to 25-year-old young person and you want to be married someday, I think if you're not currently in a relationship or wishing God would bring someone into your life, I would just say let God grow you up. Let him reveal things about who you are and bring experiences. Let him love you like you would want a husband to love you. Let him show you how much he cares about you, because no human is going to fulfill the needs or the thoughts that the gaps in our life. I mean, there will be certain marriages that you'll maybe see those qualities in, but really it's going to be God who is going to be taking care of you for the rest of your life. And so let him show you that. Don't look for it in a person. Let him show you how much he cares about you. Let him heal you. Let him grow you up, give you life experiences. And then at the right time, and I wish I was married, so and I can't predict that any of us will ever get married, but if that were to happen, you would be more prepared and you will be more healed and ready to see a healthy person. You won't be susceptible to choosing poor, like recycling those old patterns of being or your old family patterns. If you can grow and heal and recognize those patterns now and start to address them, then you will not, hopefully, continue to keep choosing things that are not good for you.
Okay, so what advice would you give to someone who's in the dating season and they're currently dating someone? What kind of advice would you give for them?
Well, dating in the 2000s is really different than when you're younger. I would try to encourage you to look at it from, culturally, I think we should take a step back and kind of do the traditional dating.
Yeah, what would that mean?
I think taking it slower.
Pacing.
Yeah. Recognizing that time is your friend. You don't have to hurry. You should be thoughtful and create experiences that help you to learn about each other. And it's really hard to do that with social media. It's hard to do that with just all the distractions of life. And so really trying to become a little bit more like old-fashioned in the way that we approach building a relationship, getting rid of some of those things. And I think the culture really breeds a lot of distrust because of social media and some of the habits that we get into, because the habits you have now as a young person dating are what you'll carry into your relationship. And, I guess if you really want something that's stable and predictable and long-term, you've got to get rid of all the things that are going to compromise that. So I guess, I don't know if that was advice.
I love it.
Did it come out as advice?
Yeah. I heard pacing, right? So slow it down. It's okay. You have time.
Yep.
I heard create experiences. I heard that, there's this idea of the traditional where you're focused on the relationship, right? Like almost like removing distractions, slowing it down, that kind of an idea. Mm-hmm. And did I miss anything?
We'll take away the things that are going to be destroying trust.
The habits. The habits is huge. Yeah, for sure.
And then I think, we know a lot now. We're talking a lot about how to build relationships. It's very common to talk about the things. You're seeing it in many places. There's lots of books about it. So take those seriously. Like there are things and tools that will help you find people who are more aligned with you and have, building friendship. Like that's what's really a marriage should be, is a friendship with all the other parts of it, not just friends, but all the other parts. But that's marriage. So making it, a goal to be, if your goal is to be married, that you have to find somebody who is like-minded in that too, and not just looking for fun.
So what would you say to someone who is currently married?
How are you doing? What do you want me to say?
Go see someone. You need to seek support right now. If you are married.
What would I say? I would say, there's the gamut, right? I think what I know are some very just foundational things about what makes marriages good. One is recognizing that your spouse is an individual person and not a reflection of you. And if you can live in that world and what that means, you will be better off. The we is very important. We bring, the individual is important, but we are important too. The oneness of who we are. And so So, being okay with the individuality, and then recognizing that there's going to be a need to do things and make decisions together. And I think it was Pastor Ben that talks about how he makes decisions, and they just choose not to make decisions that aren't joint, with a joint yes or a joint no. Like they go away and they pray about it. They write down their pros and cons. Like they actually make really, really, like I've always been impressed with that. I thought, oh, that would have been really nice. And I don't want and coercion, I really want this and I really think we should do it. It shouldn't be part of this dialogue. It really needs to be like this honest coming together that we jointly figure out what we're going to do next about whatever the situation is, whether it's buying a house or a car or having a baby or, I don't know, just the big decisions in life. So I probably could talk a long time about all of that, but I also think if you're not doing well, get some help. There's a lot of help out there, and it's okay to get individual help if you're not ready to have marriage help. And I think sometimes you need that first, is the individual support. And if you're not in a safe place, you need to get safe, and whatever that means. So getting somebody to help you walk through what that might mean.
Yeah. Yeah. We did do an episode number 2 on when marriage is not the best, and talked a lot about safety, talked about, harm, talked about seeking help. And, it was our second episode, so it's a little early on in our process.
In your podcast to talk about that. Yeah. Well, I think it's real. Good. Well, safety, if you're not safe, you really can't build anything.
Right. And there's no intimacy.
Right.
There's no, it undermines what marriage is.
Right.
It's like taking a bulldozer to the foundation of the relationship. There is no, right, without safety.
Yeah. And the individual is important.
Huge.
I think there is it's kind of a pet peeve of my journey in the church, where there was for a long time I felt, and whether it was just my feelings or if it was true, I'll leave it to people to make their own decision, but that the marriage was more important than the individual, and it didn't really matter. Whatever was happening in your marriage, you stayed no matter what. And I think that really promoted a lot of domestic violence. And it didn't address the needs and the issues around that. People were really getting hurt in their homes. It's very, very destructive. Obviously, violence is destruction, and it's very scary to leave. There's a lot of complicated issues around leaving a violent relationship, but the individual is very important, and God loves you and doesn't want you to be in a situation where you're physically being hurt. And that can be for men or women. Men are being hurt too. And so it's not just one way. Oh, yeah. It can be both ways. So
huge.
And that really, it's just a thing that I know is happening because it's something we deal with a lot at work. And anyway.
Okay, so what would you say to someone who is divorced in 2025?
Well, I will say that it's discouraging to be single as a single person. There are many single women. I don't really know very many single men, but there are many single women who would say that it's very discouraging if they want to be married, that they're not finding a suitable partner that they really align with. So what I have really, and that's true for me. I would love to be in a relationship, but I'm not. And so I'm trying to let God be my husband, and I'm letting him show me how good he is and how much he loves me. And I see these beautiful things that God does for me. And I'm learning to just really enjoy him. And I think it's just been a joy to really heal I think that's just part of my healing. It's like I said earlier about my young years. This is learning to love God and to know Him and to let Him love me as a husband is very, very, it's a very special time. I think that we have what we need. And that's one of the messages of my life is, coming from a family that had a lot of financial means to a marriage that we didn't. We started off poor and we sort of ended poor. But what I recognize is that God always met my needs and He always gave me what I needed. And so I apply that to the situation in my life. If I needed and God wanted me to have a spouse, I would have one right now. But as of right now, it's not happening. So I'm just trusting that there's a reason. And when it's the right time and there's a place for it and there's a reason for it in my life, I'm going to just trust that everything, the lack or what I'm perceiving as lack is just protection. It's really okay to be single and learn how to be alone and then let God fill in the gaps for me. But I say that it doesn't mean there's not a struggle or there's not, some sad days or frustrations or whatever. Yeah. The things that happen. I probably am too long-winded about advice. Sorry.
No, you're perfect about advice. No, that was wonderful. That was beautiful. Thank you for speaking into those different areas, because obviously there's suffering. There's suffering when you're single, and there's hard things when you're dating, and there's very difficult parts of marriage. And being divorced or single in this later season is also, there's just suffering all around. We're all going through difficult things, and so I appreciate you taking the time to hang out and have a good conversation. I appreciate you sharing all that you shared and being so generous and compassionate and gentle and I appreciate you and your wisdom. And so thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to say some of my thoughts. Hopefully I didn't say anything too controversial or, upsetting to people. I hope that people just can kind of take it for what it is. It wasn't, comprehensive in any stretch of the imagination, but it was just, some off the cuff thoughts and experiences that I've had. And so anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
It's one of my favorite things about you are the expert on your story. And so your story is what it is. And my hope is that people will be able to take bits and pieces of your story, the hard parts, the good parts, that would encourage them and inspire them. And I don't think you've offended anyone. Because your story is just your story. That's just what it is. Yeah. And if, we all have our stories. So I appreciate you. I adore you. You're awesome.